Welcome back to Good Morning Enablement. Today we're focused on people just getting started in an instructional design, graphic design, or video production role. Now, if you're already seasoned, please don't sign out. As mentors, we are often asked for advice from those changing or just getting started in their careers. The world's changed a lot since you and I got started. AI, anyone? And today's topic could help you up your coaching game when people come to you for advice. I'm Roger Jennings, one of the 3 founders of Good Morning Enablement, and let's get started. Today we're interviewing Kevin Flores, co-author of the book Design Career Handbook, Everything You Need to Know to Get a Job and Be Successful. Kevin Flores is a product and design leader with over 25 years of experience in the industry. He's held major positions at corporations such as LinkedIn, 23andMe, and Verizon. Kevin has built and led teams in product design, user research, and content strategy. He's also an entrepreneur, having co-founded an agency in Silicon Valley and multiple startups. Now, for full disclosure, I used to work for Kevin early in my career, where his company, Lightspeed Interactive, gave me my first opportunities to work in multimedia, video, and motion graphics. All right, Kevin, I was trying to make your head explode with all those props. Now, before we get started, I have a silly question for you, and I'm hoping it will be an icebreaker. And going forward, I'm going to do this for all of my guests. And for you out in the audience, I'd love to see in the comments what you think the best answer to this is. You ready, Kevin?
I'm ready.
You ready? Okay, dude. Who is the cooler species in Star Wars, Ewoks or Jawas?
Oh, Jawas by far.
I expect one person to have a controversial answer in the comments, and you know who our blue friend is. And I agree with you. Jawas are the best.
Nice.
Okay. Kevin, your book covers a wide range of design careers. You know, for instructional designers, who's primarily my audience, and they're often in hybrid roles, part content writer, part graphic designer, part programmer. How can they best leverage the advice in your book to build a portfolio that showcases both skill sets, or all 3 or 4 skill sets?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Roger. Looking forward to our chat today, and we go way, way back for sure. Your question's a great one. I mean, first of all, you know, all types of design roles have tons of overlapping skills, as we know. And you hit upon the most common in your field. There's obviously the foundational and universal design principles like layouts and grids and hierarchy, balance, alignment, how to use color and imagery and typography and all of that. And of course, content writing. I speak about storytelling a lot, often as related to writing and presenting. You know, essentially, we're all storytelling in our jobs every day, whether it's pitching ideas, presenting concepts, and especially when convincing or influencing stakeholders or clients. So when it comes to portfolios, it's really about bringing those skills together to tell a crisp story about a project. Probably the advice I give the most is, except for 1 or 2 projects, you don't need to tell the whole story for every case study. You really need to focus in and share like compelling details and anecdotes. You know, to grab, writing term, like you have to have hooks for each project and essentially tell how you were the hero in executing them.
Absolutely. I think it's really important, based on me hiring people to work on my teams. A lot of times there's just too much information, or a lot of times I'm looking at the portfolio and I'm wondering, what did this person actually do in the work? Because sometimes the something looks so grand that it's hard to believe somebody coming into the field could have done that. So I think it really is important to highlight the specific things that somebody's done to get to the deliverable that you're sharing.
That's right. Yeah. When somebody presents like a very large project, they all start to blend together as well, and they just become too much information. So zeroing in on the interesting tidbits and anecdotes, they essentially make them more memorable, and that's really what you want when you have a portfolio.
Yeah, at first glance, I think when somebody looks at the portfolio, you're going to see some really cool Jawa sandcrawler animation. And it's like, okay, I want to dig a little bit deeper in here. But a lot of times too, the story behind how you got there is really, really important, because you might be joining a team, and understanding, how you problem solve in a team, or how you collaborate can be really important. So the glitz and glamour can be there to grab the eye, but the story behind that is also so much important.
That's right, for sure.
Yeah. Many instructional designers work in corporate settings where their primary output is on-demand courseware. What are the key differences in how they should approach their career development and job search compared to a designer in a traditional agency or studio? I think this is kind of tailgating on to the little bit of our last discussion, because your portfolio in this case might be 100% interactive, so you're not going to have cool typography layouts to show. What is your take on this?
Yeah, it's super fun to talk with you about instructional designers today, because I don't interact with them as often. But I would think that when looking for jobs or talking about your work, instructional designers have something interesting in that they can talk about both the development of the content itself and essentially the whole package of how the content was delivered or taught even. In a way, I think about instructional design kind of like product design in that regard, because there's clearly specific goals and success criteria for a project, such as learning objectives or engagement metrics. Those are pretty common for us as well. And those can be highlighted, as those can be the highlights of a case study, especially if you're looking to level up or find a new job in a related kind of role. I think when it comes to like graphic design or visual design, they tend to lean towards like the creative ideas and I hate to say it, but the artistic expression. And in the world of agencies and studios, they often expect to see that design work relative to supporting campaigns or visual assets that drive experiences versus the process of creating the content.
Absolutely. One of the things that's maybe different with the instructional designers to graphic designers is that the storytelling aspect is really embedded in what they're doing, especially if they're, building the full-on courseware.
That's right. Right. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, so when instructional designers are creating, say, a course, how much are they measuring the impact of what they put out? Or, is it like a typical project where, there's metrics tracked and there's engagement tracked, for example?
Oh, definitely there's metrics tracked, there's engagement tracked. Depending on what platforms you're using, you can go down to question level reporting on what a student has actually looked at or clicked on, or how long they looked at something. Some of the fun things about storytelling also, and this wasn't something I don't remember if I was going to ask you or not, but gamification is something that we like to do in our courseware to drive engagement. And it's like, wow, if you're going to come up with some cool new gamification component, what's the story behind it? And for those that might be watching who don't do instructional design, gamification is just, it can be something as simple as adding a leaderboard into your course so that you can see what your colleagues are doing, to help motivate you to want to beat them. It can be something like, as you go through a course, collecting pieces of information and assembling it together. And, maybe there's a giveaway or something like that. But the metrics is really important. And it's always a dream to be able to see, everything that somebody clicked on. Not necessarily to go into a deep dive of evaluating the person. Of course, you want to evaluate the person, but it's also helpful to the instructional designer to say, oh, this is something I tried and it didn't really work. Right. I like to have learning paths, so that you can chart your way through a course, have some of the gamification there. If you have a learning path of optional content, it's a case where, was the content looked at or not? It's optional, so that they're not required to have taken it, but maybe they did. And maybe it would lead you to think that we need to add more of that into future courses.
That's cool. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like things like progress meters and levels and checklist kind of things. But certainly, games and points and badges are fun too, even in learning environments. Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Since we're talking about portfolios a bit behind us, what are some of the common portfolio mistakes you see designers make when trying to transition from like an instructional design to a more dedicated graphic or a visual design role? People are hopping around careers. What mistakes do you see in their portfolios?
I think what we touched upon one. It's that case studies that just tell you too much. Like if a case study or a project that's shared in a portfolio is too long and too wordy and has everything in it, and then you multiply that times the number of projects. Like I said, it gets kind of muddied in a reviewer's mind. They don't really see things to take out of it. But it's different. It's different for different types of disciplines as well. So, like when you're talking about instructional designers, as we said, there's kind of a balance between not only showing a little bit of the process as a designer, but then also maybe some of the cool stuff as a creative person, the graphic design side. So I'd say in that regard, sometimes you do have to show some of those big swings in the creative work, whether it's like a more substantial peek behind the curtain of the creative process, whether that's like inspiration or crazy ideas explored, or different directions considered. But it depends on how far you get into the world of like areas that I'm a little bit more removed from these days, but like demo reels or scissor reels versus those case studies. I think, I'm turning that back to a question for you, like particularly in the instructional design space, what do typical portfolios look like? Is it sort of a balance between those two things, or they tend to fall one way or the other?
I was hiring when I was at ServiceNow instructional designers, and the challenge I had always was, how much of this course did a person really make? And if I was really considering them as a candidate, I would want to, drill in and ask them some questions. And to be honest, a lot of corporate content, it's not Hollywood. It's going to be training on a tool, or it's going to be, something that's informational. So it's not necessarily going to be really exciting and whiz bang to look at. Right. So that's where if you had come up with some sort of gamification or some little side path, that stuff's really cool to share, and that would get my attention. And then for an instructional designer, I'm really going to want to know what level of participation did you do? Did you design the whole course? Were you part of a team? And then there's always those silly HR questions about, tell me something that went wrong on the project and how you solved it.
Right.
My favorite stuff is always the problem solving, not when I'm asking the question, but I found for myself, I learn more faster if there's a problem that needs to be solved. And if I'm part of a team solving it, then the outcome's always better. The other thing I do is video, and I see a lot of video portfolios, and I just, your portfolio should be really short, and it should show your best work, but it also needs to show me, if I'm trying to hire you, that you understand what my company is, what the product is, what we're doing. I see so many demo reels, and I'm like, this person doesn't know what the job is. They didn't read the job description, or this person didn't bother to look and see what kind of company I'm at. So, it's really important to tailor, your exact content to what you're going to show. And I think, Kevin, back in the day, when we were getting started, it was a lot more easy to have a cool portfolio and show it. But these days, the competition for the good jobs is so tremendous that I would say you've got to put in that extra work to really customize your reel for each person you're applying to. And then it's up to you to decide, is it worth that effort or not? How important is this job that I'm trying to apply for?
Yeah, that's amazing. And I hear what you're saying about the customizing portfolio if it's video based. And you're right, I'm a bit more removed from that. This is something that comes up about portfolios all the time. And, I think it comes down to like really, really good curation of, like you said, your best work. That is a mistake I see sometimes where a designer has too much work in their portfolio. So it really does. It's a skill to be able to curate your work. It really takes some discipline. But I would say that one thing, again, not necessarily full on like demo reels, but one thing I have been seeing that's sort of related is that people have been doing like Loom type overlays of their own projects and using that as a way to sort of like customize an application. So maybe their portfolio is pretty, set with their best work and as best of, covering all the bases of what they need to present, their capabilities and their experience, but then they can customize, maybe a particular project application or an app, a video for an application where they talk more specifically about something from the project that maybe is not standard in each project. They can customize per application.
Yeah, the Loom is a really cool technology, and it does seem, I don't think I've seen somebody do that before. I mean, I know people who use it, and we've used it in the past, but I think that's a fantastic idea because it just lets you, tell the backstory of what's on screen.
Right. Totally.
So, of course, you're the author. Your book or one of the two authors, your book emphasizes the importance of networking. And I wanted to ask you what you feel some of the actionable low-pressure networking strategies are for someone who is an introvert and spends most of their time working remotely.
Yeah, I'm sure I sound like a broken record. I mean, you see advice everywhere, articles, videos, posts. And of course, every mentor or coach advises this a lot. But it really is true. I mean, networking, I consider it like a superpower, right? So no matter how introverted you are, you have to carve out time to network. But you're right, it can start small, basically engaging with people on social networks, commenting on their content, sharing content. And, in the real world, as much as you can, speak with people at events that you're at. Definitely prompt LinkedIn connections. I mean, you have to connect with people so that you can stay connected and connect technically on LinkedIn so that you can stay connected with people. One tip I give a lot is, really pay attention to what other people's needs and interests are. I'm very guilty of this. I see articles or books or talks or tutorials, and I'll just send them to people, just DM, hey, I thought you might be interested in this. I remember we talked about that, or I saw this. That's something that pays dividends down the road. I've done this my entire career. One tip, to kind of help you stay on top of this is I actually have this. I have a monthly reminder to reach out to few people that I may not have been in touch with for a while. So in addition to just keeping up with them, your close connection, just having a reminder to reach out to like a little bit wider net on a frequent basis, at least reminds you. And then you can think about, I should reach out to this person.
Yeah, I'm really proud of myself. Pat myself on the head. Last Friday, spontaneously, about halfway through the day, I said, you know what? I miss some of the people I used to work with. So I called together an impromptu happy hour, and I had about 5 people, 2 different countries, 5 people. We were on the same time zone show up, and it was just fabulous. And one of the things that irritates me about networking is when somebody reaches out and they're just reaching out because they want a job or something. And it's like, well, gosh, we were friends for a while, or we did some great stuff. And now you're just kind of whatever. And I like to think that you got to, as part of the networking, you got to keep the pulse warm on your connections. And I'm not as great as that as I wish I was, but you got to keep the pulse warm so that if you do need to reach out, it's not a last minute thing. It's like, yeah, we're still friends just like we were, but put together a Zoom happy hour and invite the people that you used to work with and see who shows up. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea. And you're right. I mean, everybody's guilty of it. You go into cycles where you just kind of heads down doing your job or, spending time with your family or your friends. And you don't really think about doing this until you're in a need. And so you're right. And that's why it's like a broken record recommendation. But if you make it a regular practice or even set yourself a reminder, as I said, at least you'll be reminded regularly to try to do it. So even if you're off sometimes, but I think once you get in the groove, it actually makes you feel good when you're helping somebody out, even if it's just recommending something to them. And like I said,
sure
that kind of proactive, sharing of things, supporting others when you don't need something matters, and it is more authentic and reasonable when you do have a need later on.
Yep. Let's talk about the soft skills you mentioned in your book. And for my audience, again, mostly the instructional designers are related. What are the top 3 soft skills that you feel they need to master to be successful in a corporate or a remote environment?
Sure. I'll give you the lamest answer first because, this is like, I don't know, you don't get taught this very much in any kind of environment. I mean, you can go back down to like grade school or high school or college, but something that's worth just being really, really good at and remembering to get good at it is just managing your time. I mean, it's such a basic life skill that it's important in all situations, but particularly in a work environment, as we all know, your work is probably a chain of dependency for much larger initiatives with other resources and timelines and schedules. And so just getting really good at your own time management, it does reflect well on you with your peers and your partners, et cetera. The other 2 are kind of related. Communication, which I kind of bucket storytelling as we talked about, but coupled with presenting and writing. Obviously, you have to be a good communicator, and it's essential for being seen, for being heard, for convincing, evangelizing ideas, and evangelizing for yourself as well. And both of those are really foundations for collaboration, of course. I talk about the social game, which is everything from working with your manager to working with your colleagues, even leaders up the chain. But the one thing that I advise the most is to develop a few partners in crime. Those are the people that you work really close with. You work really well with these particular people. And even go as far as like supporting each other to look good in what you're delivering. So it's sort of one of those things which, again, it's obvious, but until you put a name to it and are proactive about it, you don't really think about that. So that's something that I often recommend to people is find 1 or 2 good partners in crime that you work with. And that's whether it's remote, in person, sometimes even, colleagues that are working on different things, but you kind of keep an eye out for each other as well.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice. That last bit is fantastic because it also can fall into mentorship or coaching.
For sure.
A lot of times, of course, no company wants to, talk about being in silos, but in reality, you're probably in a bit of a silo, and having someone to talk to, in a different team, a different company, a friend, a past teacher is just so valuable because they can give you insight. And if you have the right relationship, the hard truth of what they feel, and to help you make some better decisions. The time, being on time is in corporate, especially. It's like, how many meetings have I been in where the leader is late? Or the leader set up the meeting so that the rest of us can't start the Zoom meeting. And then the negative trickle down result is, well, we could be getting work done. If the meeting was to be canceled, we could be, doing different work. And I just find it so important. Be on time for your meetings. And if you're the person scheduling the meeting, not only allow your peers to start the meeting, but I always had my team put an agenda in it, or at minimum a single bullet point, because that's just lets the people who you've invited know if they should join or be prepared to join. Or, if you've invited 25 people, maybe you really could have only invited 12, and that might help some of those people figure out they could spend their time better elsewhere.
For sure. For sure. Just to kind of reflect on a few things you said,
Yeah.
going back a moment, the whole idea of partners in crime, everything you said is completely agree with for sure. Like the different types of relationships you can have with people. One thing I didn't quite mention is like partners in crime. In my opinion, of course, they can be peers or people in the same sort of like discipline that you have, but it's even more powerful when, you have good partners in crime that are your cross-functional partners. Like maybe they're in marketing or they're in product development or even engineering. Because it really it builds that trust that you're also looking out for them and you understand their pressures or their deliverables, and again you're starting to be a better collaborator the more that you have those strong relationships. Managing time, one thing I'll say as well is that and this has happened so many times in my career, not for me specifically, but designers on my teams, that if they are really known to be, I don't want to say fast, I want to say more like efficient. In the very least, they deliver on time or they're ahead of schedule. I mean, those people are just seen as rock stars, even if their work is like, pretty decent. But it really is one of those things that helps you stand out from other people. And that alone can make you a person that others want to work with.
Yeah, be on time and deliver what you promise.
Right. Exactly.
Since the book is about people just getting started, and you did just mention, cross-functional partners in crime, I just wanted to put out there, because I don't think you would necessarily know this, when you land your first corporate job, if that's what you're going for. And the power of the cross-functional partner in crime is oftentimes those projects are going to be much more cool than your day-to-day work. But when it comes time for your quarterly or annual review, it's really nice to be able to have cross-functional people, give your manager feedback on what you've been doing, because it's easy to get feedback from the team. It's easy to pull positive feedback from the team. But to have those other folks in the organization speak on your behalf, that's really powerful. So, look at building advocates outside of your own team.
Yeah, I just one little add on to that. That's absolutely true, especially in the cases where you're looking to get a promotion. So those testimonials or feedback from cross-functional peers, they become even more important as you're kind of climbing up the chain.
Absolutely. Let's see. Your book discusses the art of the interview. What's a red flag question a designer should be prepared to answer? And what's a great question a designer can ask an interviewer to show their strategic thinking?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a no-brainer. It's such a well-tread topic. It's a shame to see any job seeker who isn't prepared. You actually talked about this a little while ago. I think that, the first thing that people need to know is, if it's not obvious, is you can find common interview questions for any role imaginable. So I always just tell people, collect those questions in a document, type out your responses, practice. Those alone should be second nature to answer. When it comes to red flags, again, I think I'm kind of piggybacking on something you said earlier. Beyond general preparedness, it is absolutely a red flag. I agree with you, what you said earlier, when a candidate is clueless about the specific role or even the company. So as a recommendation, you should be prepared to ask questions about the specific role, the team, the product or projects, types of projects. And you absolutely should be knowledgeable about the company, its mission, what they actually do. Those are the kind of things you need to lean on when you're literally asked the question of why do you want to work here, with some level of confidence. When it comes to strategic thinking, I think that's part of it as well. So even at the earlier stages of one's career, having a good understanding of the company's mission and the kind of tangible business goals or metrics that are important. This is where the cross-functional partners come in, is when you start to understand that level of discourse and discussion, you can start to participate in those discussions And that's what enables you to be able to confidently talk about strategy. It's always something that's very challenging. It's like, how do I get better at strategy? How do I get better at strategy? Well, strategy is literally understanding all the goals of all the teams, where you fit in, and that you're participating in that. And so it really does start with understanding, larger company goals and missions, and then again, the responsibility of your peers and your partners so that you can talk about how you participate in the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. I wanted to ask you, what is a key piece of advice you have for a designer who's feeling burnt out or uninspired in their current job? So I just flipped the coin. You're on the beginning of your career, excited to go forward. And now, oh man, I have to go to work again. So what do you recommend people do if they're in that burnt out or uninspired spot?
Yeah. I mean, this is a hard one. And interestingly enough, I am writing about this now as part of another project I'm working on. I'll just, very early sneak peek of in here, writing about, later stage career and changes that you make. The simple answer is make a change. I know that is much easier said than done, and it may be very difficult for many for all kinds of logistical reasons. But, short of that, I tell people to find ways outside of the day-to-day job to keep inspired. It could be art or it could be anything creative at all, reading or writing. And the other thing is anyone who has some level of creativity in their core and is part of a job, you're going to get burnt out. You're going to get bored. That's a flip side of thinking about it is hey, am I, burnt out is one thing. It's very clear. We understand what that means. We understand the signs. But if you think about it as getting bored and not being challenged, it does kind of shift your mindset a bit. And it might really inspire you to start thinking about some bigger changes. Now, again, I know those drastic changes might be difficult, especially in this market. But as soon as you start to have that feeling, you need to get motivated to start passively searching as soon as possible. And that's okay, whether there's some level of urgency or whether it's sort of just you're comfortable where you are, but you're ready to challenge yourself with something new. You just have to change that mindset and get ready to make that change. Start thinking about it.
Yep. What's one piece of advice you wish you had received earlier in your design career?
Yeah, it's literally to seek out mentors. I'm not woe is me about it. And you mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm not woe is me about it, but, I and many people that I know, my peers coming up, we didn't really seek out this kind of support. At least as far as I know, amongst my community, I'd say it's much more normalized now, or maybe it's just more prevalent. And it could be helpful to just level set what you're feeling, as we just talked about. Where you are in your career and your career path. But perhaps it's just having someone as a sounding board when you are considering those pivots or those big changes, because, we need support, and you can only read so much about it. You can only watch so many videos, and you need to have that human connection. So I do say that having mentors or coaches is very, very helpful. I definitely wish I had some more formal ones in my past. Obviously, we've always had people we can talk to, but in this more specific type of relationship where that support mechanism is there and understood, it can make a big difference. I really, not patting myself on the back here, but I've been mentoring for, 20 years, more formally maybe in the last 10. And I've really recognized just by the feedback I get and the feeling I get from helping other people that, it's really important for people to have that sort of support and figuring out your own personal kind of guide rails and setting a direction for where you want to go.
Yeah. If you're in a spot where you wish you had a mentor and you don't have the first clue of where to start, you can talk to your boss about it, and ask your boss to recommend somebody in the company. If your boss is invested in you and your success, as they should be, your boss might be aware of somebody who might be able to give you some advice and help you move along or make the next jump into what you want to do. and later on, it was one of my bosses, Maria, one of my partners here on Good Morning Enablement. And it's like, she just urged me, get a mentor, get a coach to help you out. And it was just fabulous. It was just fabulous. And the people I looked at were, cross-functional. They weren't in my, my part of the organization. And that just kind of made it fun because they knew the company goals and where we were going. But they could also give me advice, because they're more seasoned than me and knew the lay of the land. So that's that resource.
Yeah, that's super helpful, as you said, when you are, if you have somebody to speak with that's cross-functional, it widens your eyes as well. And it allows you an opportunity to share more about what you're doing because they won't be as familiar. So it actually helps you frame up like how you talk about what you do in a different way as well, which obviously is very, very important for having a long career for sure.
Yep. All right, Kevin, this has been fabulous. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a fun conversation. And I hope
I think we've talked about this stuff over the years anyways. And then you and Janine worked on the book and, people come to me for advice and coaching. And that's why I said at the top, if you're seasoned, stay on because, Kevin's book is a good resource that you can recommend. And, there's a lot of satisfaction to helping people out and giving them advice and seeing them grow.
Absolutely.
Do you have any special place you recommend people to buy your book?
Yeah, the Design Career Handbook. It's available in paperback and ebook at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. You can go to designcareerbook.com. That's the book's website and find those links. And I always encourage people to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to meet people of all different industries and different types of disciplines. And, it gets back to that networking. And I often learn so much talking to other people, all the time, no matter what level they are. And, any way I can help people, it really is, it's a great way to give back. And I also learn so much every time I meet somebody new.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody will ask me a new question and I'm going to go figure out the answer if I don't know it. And a lot of times it's fun. So thank you again. This has been really enjoyable. We'll put information on how to contact you in the comments. And for you out in the audience, please like, share, and comment on this video. And especially share if you know someone or are coaching someone who is just getting started in any of the fields that we discussed today. And remember, put in the comments, who do you like more, Jawas or Ewoks? Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks, Roger.